So welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Aurora Winter, and the one and only Xander Sprague. So delighted to be connecting with you today. And today we're going to be talking about the key thing about how to plan your epic life, business, health, relationships, etc. But before we get into planning and all the tips you have, I'd love you to give an update for our listeners about what you've been busy doing, the highlights of what you have achieved over the past few weeks.
It has been momentous, to say the least, because I completed my 6-year journey on Friday, which is graduate school, 3,000 hours of internship, and on Friday, I am delighted to announce that I passed my professional clinical counseling exam, and now I am just waiting for the state of California to verify the results and send my license, but I don't foresee any reason why that won't happen. So this particular epic journey that I've been on, that I've been dreaming about, has concluded. I am now licensed.
And I hear you aced the test in spite of the fact that you were worried if you're going to pass it or not, but you aced it.
I did do well, thank you. Yes, I studied very hard for it. I mean, that obviously is huge. And one of the things that's interesting I've been experiencing over the last few days is, like any epic journey, when you get to the end, you are really excited, but there's that now what? And I have to admit, I've had a few moments of all of these things that I've been telling people I'm going to do once I get licensed. I now have to do these things.
It's like the day after Christmas or the day after your birthday. It's now what? But fortunately, you've got a lot of other epic plans. So before we go on to what the challenges have been over the last few weeks, can you just explain how much it means to you to have this completed? What difference will this make in your life and the lives of the people you serve?
For me personally, again, 6 years of my life going for this thing and hitting milestones and stuff. It means a lot to me. I feel very accomplished because this was no menial task. There was a lot of work that went into this. What does it mean for other people? It's a few things. It means I can now officially and legally provide mental health services on my own for other people. I think it also helps to, when I'm speaking, helps to back up what I'm saying and the legitimacy of what I'm saying, because I think a lot of people, when you are a licensed mental health professional, a lot goes into that. So there's some weight behind what I'm saying. There's some proof.
Yeah, you're not just shooting from the hip. There's a lot of weight, years of work and 3,000 hours of practical experience. So you're not just making it up on the fly.
Absolutely. And I think in general, we understand what someone who becomes like a medical doctor goes through. So there's that understanding. And so I think there's that. I think also, I just think it helps me in that side of trying to provide education for other mental health providers. Being licensed gives me more legitimacy for them to listen to me and help other sibling survivors.
Well, it's like Jordan Peterson. His book, 12 Rules for Life, is great and useful for the general public, but the fact that he's also a professor and has a clinical practice lends credence to what he's saying and lends weight to what he's saying. He's not just making it up
Absolutely.
2 seconds before the interview. So it'll help you as you're talking about your new book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward. Okay, so what about obstacles over the past few weeks? What obstacles have you experienced? Then, of course, we will want to just leave a takeaway from the past couple of weeks, what value add for the audience, and then we'll get on to planning.
I think like one obstacle that I think everyone can relate to is I was studying really hard for this exam. And you have that yin and yang of I'm feeling confident one moment, and then all of a sudden I can't remember the symptoms for general anxiety. Oh my God, I can't remember anything. I'm going to fail. I think that that obstacle of truly believing in yourself, I really do. But we always have doubt that comes in. And I went into the exam knowing that I would pass, because as you say, Aurora, it already is. Just by asking the universe for it, it is already happened.
That's right.
And just knowing that if I didn't quite know something, or I had to make a guesstimation on a question, to rely on my experience and not freak out. So
Yeah.
there was that. Having completed that this week, these last few days, I don't have my exam as studying for my exam as an excuse not to be doing the work I need to be doing for Epic Begins with One Step Forward. So all of a sudden I have all of this additional time, and what am I going to do with it? And I have to say that by and large, I've been really good about getting stuff done, but I realize I need to create a little more structure for myself so I can push this even further forward.
Oh, so we're in a perfect spot for you to be talking about planning. Then you can implement it and tell
Absolutely.
us next week how it went.
How timely.
How timely. We teach best what we are learning and what's important to us. I want to celebrate and acknowledge you because you decided to launch your new book and your internationally recognized speaking career during the pandemic and while you were also finishing this degree. And you said, "No, I'm not going to put these things off. I may be a little slower than I'd like. I can't control the pandemic. I can't control what's happening with the events being canceled. And I do need to put in the work, but I'm not going to play the when then game." So I want to celebrate and acknowledge you for that. Because I know it's been tough sometimes. You've been torn. You want to work on your new book. You want to work on your speaking, but you could not afford to not pass your exam.
Absolutely. And kept reminding myself that passing my exam, getting licensed, is part of my business plan. So I am not taking away from my business. I'm simply I was concentrating on a different part of my business that was equally as important. I think that's a really important thing, is when we're on an epic journey, there are multiple parts of that journey, and they're all important, but sometimes we have to prioritize, and we have to say, I'm going to be doing this part of this for this long, and then I'll move over here. Now I have more time to work on the book, on the speaking, on creating more program material.
That's right. It's cool. So hang on 1 second, because I don't think these are working. Can you say something? I guess they were working. All right. I was just like, is this working properly? All right. Thank you for that update. Super proud of you. Congratulations. Now, Epic begins with one step forward, and one of those steps is planning.
Absolutely.
So what tips do you have about planning, which is something that you just mentioned, that for yourself, it's very good to have a schedule, and it's something you are going to be leaning into, doubling down on now that you've passed your exam?
Absolutely. I spent a lot of time this week thinking about, like, how am I going to share with people, like, the plan, right? It's all great to sit there, and the chapters in the book are great, but now it comes down to, let's put some where the rubber is going to meet the road, as it were. And I think we can't do any journey. We can't do anything without having an understanding of what we would like to achieve. So I think the first step that you really need to do is start by writing out what it is that you'd like to achieve. It's amazing when we can think about stuff, but when we start to put it down on paper, it becomes real.
Exactly.
Or if you're typing, I'm old school, so I said write it down on paper, but I think everyone understands. You start to put it down in some Word type format.
And I would recommend that this week is a great week for everybody to lean into journaling and journal in the morning. Think about what you would like your life to be like a year from now. Think about who you want to be. Think about who you are. Think about what makes you happy, and just allow that to be informing this plan that Xander is going to give us the outline for. Okay.
Absolutely. So I get a few steps here within this particular about writing down what you want to achieve. So think about the steps that you need to take to achieve this goal. Now, you probably don't know all of the steps that you're going to need to take, but there's some basic steps that I'm sure you could figure out for your own journey. There are steps that I know I need to take in order to be prepared for my book to come out and for me to speak in front of thousands of people around the world. But there are steps that are yet to be revealed to me that I need to take, but that's okay.
Exactly right. Go ahead.
Not having every single step figured out before you start is okay. In fact, that's really what you need to do. You need to start to take those steps forward and not worry that you don't know how every single step is going to go.
Exactly right. Because as you go forward, it will be revealed.
Absolutely. I'll just quickly jump back and say this 6-year epic journey I've been on, I understood some broader steps. I need to go to graduate school. I need to get my master's. I need an internship. I didn't know where my internship was. I didn't know what that would look like. I didn't know how graduate school would go. I need to get licensed. How am I going to study for that? I didn't have those steps, but I still had the bigger goals along the way, if that makes sense.
You had the rough plan. Okay.
I did. And that comes down to it. What is your preliminary plan? Understanding that your plan is probably going to change, and that's okay.
It's like everything is twice created. So it's your blueprint. And
Absolutely.
when you build the house, it'll be different because you'll be like, I think I want an extra bathroom, or let's have marble here instead of tile.
Exactly. Or I really need a window here. I think another key thing is, who do you need to help you to achieve this? Start to think about how to do this. No one can do an epic journey on their own. I did not get to where I am without the support of friends and family and new people that I met along the way who were instrumental in my success.
Exactly right. It takes a team to achieve those epic goals.
Right. Now, the next thing is create a timeline for your start at the end. Start where it is that you want to get to, and then work your way backwards. It sounds funny, but it's actually it's a very easy way to do your planning, because if you understand this time and space where you want to be, then you can work your way backwards.
And it's so much more peaceful, like you said earlier. I have that attitude, it's already done. And when you're sitting in that space of, I've already passed my exam, or it's already done, whatever your goal is, it's so much easier to see what did you do the week before and the week before. So to give a really small example, my new book, Your $1 Million Message, is coming out May 5th, 2021. So I'm planning on having 100 reviews in May. Okay, so what do I have to do to get 100 reviews? It's a simple, straightforward goal. So on average, one person in 100 will review a book. So I'm like, okay, I need to sell 10,000 books, or give away 10,000 books, or somehow get my book in 10,000 hands to achieve that goal. But by having the goal, it also made me realize, wait a minute, what if I focused on places where people are more likely to give a review? Like Goodreads, for example. So I decided 2 days ago, I'm doing a Goodreads giveaway. People can go to Goodreads, they can get giving away 100 ebook copies before the book is released. And Goodreads really strongly encourages people to leave a review. You don't have to, but they encourage. So already by having it's already done, 100 reviews when the book comes out in May, helped me distinguish a stepping stone that I wouldn't have thought of if I hadn't gotten clear that was a goal.
Absolutely. And I just explained, when I'm talking about have that endpoint, my endpoint for my LPCC was passing the exam.
Yeah.
And then it worked its way backward to, what do I need to do to get there?
Yeah.
I also think that it's really important along your journey to mark some milestones that you can reach and have celebrations for those. Because some of our epic journeys are not as long and some are multi-year. And so there were things along the way that I set as I want to achieve this. And the very first one when I entered graduate school was successfully make it through my first semester. I hadn't been formally in school for 22 years. Understand that I certainly knew how to study. I spent the first 22 years of my life doing nothing but being a student. However, I hadn't formally done it. So when I went back to it, I had to get those muscles back into shape. So that first milestone I set was just make it through the first semester.
And that was really smart that you did that because A, that's the highest risk period of time. That's where a lot of dropouts happen. But also then you could congratulate yourself. Hey, I made it through the first semester.
Right.
Instead of this multi-year goal feeling like.
And when you know that you're on this sort of long, it's a long journey that you're on, you do have to have those places where you do get to celebrate because it makes you feel good. It helps you along the way. And then when it gets hard, you have a place, not like I have to save celebrations for 6 years until I pass my exam. That's a long time to wait for celebrating me.
Yeah. That's not Xander style.
Not at all.
And so breaking it into bite-sized pieces helps to keep the celebration alive and the triumph each step of the way.
Absolutely. And even better, set a reward for yourself for achieving that milestone.
Did you give yourself a reward for passing your exam or for sticking it through the first semester?
For passing my exam, this is my goal, my getting to gleefully jump around and say, I did it. Absolutely. I made it through that first semester and I had some headphones that I wanted. But I held off until I got done, and that was my reward.
Well, that's nice. It doesn't have to be something like buying a new house or getting a new pool.
No,
I do know that you did both of those things recently.
I did.
Getting the headphones. But I agree with you. Like when I went back to school in my 50s to get my MBA, that first semester was like a killer. It's like all these kids are like lightning speed on the Excel. And I was like, where's the button to turn it on kind of thing. And exactly, how do I log onto the Wi-Fi? And so good for both of us for being lifelong learners.
Absolutely.
What's another way for people to keep their goals top of mind?
That comes to my next point, which is create a vision board that has all of the things that you want. There is such power in a vision board. And if you don't know what a vision board is, you can use a poster paper. And I cut out pictures and phrases that I may find in magazines or words that have meaning to me that I'll type them out. And I put them all up on this vision board. And then you put it someplace that you're going to see it every day. I had a vision board over my desk. So as I sat at my desk, I could see my vision board. I could see the things that I was proclaiming to the universe that I wanted.
Nice.
And don't limit yourself. Go big.
Go epic.
Go
Maybe
epic.
Next week you can show us your vision board, unless you
I got to make a new one, Aurora.
Okay.
I had one from a couple of years ago, but I clearly have to make a new vision board.
I think so, because things have moved on. And just a little tip, like I had a vision board when I was moving around a lot, when I was living in Italy, and then when I was traveling. And what I did is I just put it inside of a plastic piece of paper like this.
Yep.
These are my media sound bites, by the way. And then I had all these pictures and I could put them in a carry-on suitcase. Yep. So your vision board can be something
It doesn't have to be huge, but sometimes that big 12 by 24 poster board or whatever is helpful, because then you have lots of room to put up pictures and phrases. And some people will just put stuff up randomly, and other people will organize their vision board for the different areas in their life that they're looking for change and achievement in.
Do you recommend one way over the other?
I think it's personal. Some people really to have it all organized, and other people the hodgepodge, because it makes you work a little harder to find that phrase. Where did I put that phrase? And then you see something else versus I'm only looking in the upper left quadrant because that's all about my book. Or
it's very interesting. You're inspiring me to do a fresh vision board also, because it's been a little while. Oh, Siri's decided to get in the action here. Turn that off. Because we really are aiming creatures. And there's something about setting a plan, setting an intention, and then when you capture it in something visual, it's like we are aiming creatures. The neuroscience of how our brain works is you've told your brain, that's what I want. And then it will find ways while you're sleeping or walking the dog to make those things actually manifest and happen. And it'll show you a better way to do it because you have visualized it. I don't know, when before you were intending to have kids, when that wasn't on your radar, you'd probably never see pregnant women or women and men rolling a kid in a stroller. But as soon as you think about, oh, let's have a baby, all of a sudden they're everywhere. Or you think, oh, I'd like to buy a Tesla. So I love this. It's fun and easy to do, but it's super, super powerful.
it is, and it's fun. Honestly, it's so fun. And as I said, go big. I can tell you, I know one of the things that's on my vision board is a private jet. I'm going to be successful so I can fly to all of these places and be efficient with my time.
I love it.
And I'm going to have pictures of beautiful places, because travel is also part of the reward. I've worked hard. Now I am fortunate to go travel and see beautiful places.
And if people go to xanderspragg.com, I think you've got a list of 9 epic places to inspire others. Maybe they'll put them on their vision board.
Absolutely.
So how else can people turbocharge their plan?
All right, look, a plan is, if you share your plan with people, it is amazing what happens when we tell people that we're going to do something. They all of a sudden are asking you, hey, Aurora, how is that book coming along? It's that sort of accountability, right? And if we proclaim that we're going to do something, I am certainly one of these people who most of the time really does want to achieve it. I'm going to go to the store today and buy more vegetables. Okay, I just proclaimed it. I better go get the vegetables, because when my beautiful girlfriend comes, if I don't have the vegetables, she's like, what happened to the vegetables? So there's that. Within that, believe unfailingly in yourself. You don't have room for doubters. The negative Neils and negative Nellies, you just don't have room for them. There are the people who want to rain on your parade, who want to tell you you can't do it, that you're crazy, that there's no way you're going to be able to achieve that. And here's the thing. I talked about it in the prior chapter about failure is part of the journey. Maybe you won't succeed, but you'll certainly learn a lot along the way.
That's certainly true. A lot more than if you don't make a plan. A lot of people don't make a plan because they don't want to fail. That's the only way to fail. Absolutely. Failing to plan is planning to fail.
Now,
if I could just add one tiny thing about your negative Nellies, notice if you're feeling down, notice if you feel the impulse to share your precious plan with somebody who's a wet blanket.
Yeah.
Tell somebody else, because if we get in a self-doubt loop, sometimes we are addicted to reinforcing a negative loop. So just notice if you have a pattern that if you tell something like that to your mother and she's always like, really? How could you do that? Like negative reinforcement. Don't tell your mother. If on the other hand, your mother's, yay, of course you can. You go for it. Tell your mom. But notice if you're catching yourself in a downward loop, I'm sure you'd have more to say about this, Xander. Notice who are the people who are your champions, who are true believers in you. Share with them if you're feeling a bit wobbly. Don't share with the people who are going to rain on your parade.
Absolutely. Now, share your plan far and wide, not just with your friends, but with everyone. Now, I have this sneaky way of getting to share your plan. Social norms say that if I meet you, Aurora, and I don't know who you are, I'll ask, oh, what do you do? And you will, more times than not, people will then ask what you do. Perfect opportunity for you to share your plan. Who can help you along the way? And if you don't share your plan, you keep it a secret, no one's going to help you.
That is certainly true. Especially somebody like you're just like so much woo. Everybody wants to help. Everybody really does want to help.
Right.
Especially somebody charming like you, Xander.
Now, I kind of mentioned it. I got ahead of myself. I'm so excited about all of this, but ask some people to be your accountability partners.
Mm-hmm.
The journey is so much better with company.
Yeah.
If there are people that you say, hey, I need you to bug me about this, because I know it's an aspect that I'm not necessarily excited about. I got to do this. I want to make sure that I do that. And I'll take a more common example. When we want to exercise, when we have an exercise buddy, so much easier, especially if I get up and exercise first thing in the morning. And there are certainly mornings where I'm like, oh my God, the bed is warm. I don't want to get out of bed. But if I'm meeting someone, I don't want to let them down. So I'll get up, and I rarely, if ever, regret getting up to exercise. But it's easier when you have company.
Yeah. And that's just to piggyback on that, it's underscoring that planning out how you're going to spend your time is a really valuable thing to do. Planning, oh, I'm going to run a marathon, that's a goal. But a plan is, I'm going to get up in the morning and exercise first thing, right? That's something you can check off the list.
Absolutely. And again, things that we can check off. Go back to some of the stuff I've said. Slices of pizza, one slice at a time. Then you'll get through the whole pizza.
Yeah. And I just want to harp on, choose who you want to become. Because so many people set goals that are outside of their control. They want to have a New York Times bestseller. But if you want to have a New York Times bestseller, it helps if you write a book. Funny that you can't control unless you've got millions of dollars to spend buying books and buying ad spend, as certain people I know do. But you can say, hey, I'm going to be a writer and I'm going to record my book as Xander's doing right now, or I'm going to write every day, or I'm going to write X words per week. That is something within your control. So choose who you want to be. You want to be somebody healthy. You want to be a good parent. You want to be a good partner. You want to be fit. You want to be a writer. You want to spend time on your business. These are things within your control. So then you can feel satisfied that you're making progress, whether or not you get a New York Times bestselling book or whether or not you make X dollars. Take the action and put it in your day timer.
Absolutely. Now, another step in our plan, refine as you go. So important. Don't be afraid of failure, because it's going to happen. I hate to tell you. Rarely does anyone get it perfect all the way through. And there is much learning in not getting it right. I know that there's stuff that I've tried since you and I started Aurora that didn't necessarily go exactly the way we thought it would, but that's okay. We learned from that and said, that's not the way we want to do it. We want to do it, let's try this. And I guess my attitude is I accept that I'm going to fail at some parts of this. As I go out, there are speeches that may not go as well as I want, but there is learning in that. When I used to do technical instruction, I would start off when I was first starting to teach something new, and there was inevitably stuff I forgot to teach people, little things that I wanted to tell them that. But I learned from that, and the next time I didn't forget that little tidbit that little tip or trick I wanted to teach them.
Yeah. My mother liked to say there is no failure, there's only feedback.
Yeah,
So with that approach, which is what you're saying, Xander, you get feedback on how to refine, how to improve whatever you're up to. So I think that people, it's like the difference between a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, referring to Dr. Carol Dweck's book, Mindset.
right,
And with a growth mindset, there's only feedback.
right.
If you want to be perfect, then you're also going to stay small because there's no
Absolutely.
growth there. Yeah. So I think don't be afraid of failure is such a
Right.
great point.
And my next one, pivot if you need to. As we've said multiple times, an enormous pivot had to happen because
Yeah.
we're in a pandemic and have been in a pandemic. When you're watching this, maybe the pandemic's not as big a thing anymore, hopefully, but pivot if you need to. That growth mindset of I'm going down this path, but maybe the road washed out, the bridge fell into the creek, and now I can't keep going here, no matter how bad I want to. I gotta take another route around. That's okay.
Was that the biggest pivot that you had, having to adjust your course on your speaking plans with the coronavirus?
Absolutely. Aurora, I was with you in February in
Mexico.
exactly. And I'm like, oh my God, this is great. Stadiums, it's gonna be great. And honestly, like a month later, we're all locked in our houses. All right, that plan isn't gonna work. No matter how bad I want it to, it ain't gonna work. So now what do I do?
Yeah, you had to pivot. Fortunately, now lots of people are getting interviewed on TV and radio, on Zoom or Zoom
Absolutely.
equivalents, and speakers are still needed. And lots of times they're virtual speakers. So there
Yeah.
actually did turn out to be new opportunities. But at the time, you and I both had to pivot. I had to cancel all my events that were on the calendar. And I was like, no, I was so excited about them.
And,
But
and, and,
we
and
pivot.
yeah, and I'm the first to say I can't wait until I can have a room with some people in it. I do so much better than just talking into a camera. I don't do bad, but I do better in person, as do you. We both get so much energy from being around people.
Yeah, it's
Um,
something special that happens. Yeah,
the
exactly.
last thing that I want to talk about when we talk about our plan is revisit your plan every few months to see where you are. That's something that Aurora and I have done on this journey when we started in July. Every couple of months, we look and say, where are we? We had initially thought my book would be coming out next month in April. It's not. And that's okay. We revisited the plan. We pivoted a little because there were things that were important, my passing the exam, for example. And sometimes things just take longer than you anticipated. No matter how well you try and think it through, stuff just takes longer. The editing of the book inevitably takes longer than you anticipated.
It's like many things take twice as long as you anticipate. And I think that the your book will be better for the extra time that we've taken.
It
It's
absolutely will be better. And I'm committed to having my book be what I want it to be. And that's hard and fast, set on a deadline. We have deadlines and things that timeframes we want to hit it. But I think we're both, Rory, you've published quite a few books, that sometimes you're so close to publishing and you just need that one other person to proofread it, and
yeah.
you can't find the person that you trust enough to go through and make sure that all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and you
You
don't have
can't
a
rush the baby.
yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, sometimes the amount of hours between 98% done and 100% done can be quite a few hours, as you're saying, with the dot the I's and
Well,
cross
it's
the
kind of
T's.
it's kind of to use a sports analogy, right? The longest period of a basketball game is the last 2 minutes, which could take 20 minutes to play.
Exactly.
If you just understand that, you're gentle with yourself and say, yes, I am absolutely pushing towards this goal, but realize that some things, because you simply didn't know, and there's no way that you could have known, that it just takes, some things are going to take longer. Tasks may take longer than you anticipated. Okay, now let me revisit my plan. Let me adjust my plan.
Well, it's like you said about failure, that don't be afraid of failure, don't be afraid of pivoting. And so I'd love everybody to know that your plan is always going to be wrong. but it's the right thing to have. It's the
Oh,
right thing to have a
absolutely.
plan because it's a draft, it's a work in progress. It's unfolding, it's a living document, and it will unfold as you go forward. So it's the right thing to have a plan, but it's the wrong thing to expect your plan to be
Well,
right or
absolutely.
perfect.
Absolutely. Look, I'll jump back super quickly and say I had intended to do my licensing exam in June or July of 2020. I,
Mhm.
I put that off because I wasn't gonna, I wanted to make sure that when I sent my 5 years of work into the Board of Behavioral Sciences, that that there was someone in the office to actually get it. And it wasn't just, oh, it's in a mail bin over there. Oh, we lost it. Sorry.
Yeah, things
You
did
know,
get crazy with the
and then
coronavirus.
with the restrictions of how many people can be in the testing center, once I got everything approved, I still had to wait a couple months to have a date that I could get into test.
You had to roll with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
So,
and that's that whole point that I'm talking about, which is I had a plan, I was going for it, but I had to pivot.
shit happens.
It,
Do you have one more point around how to help people refine as they go?
I don't. That was what I had come up with so far.
All right. I thought you were going to say revisit the plan every couple of months,
Well, I did
which you
say that.
probably you already said. So I want to ask you, these are really great points, and we'll recap them in a couple of minutes just for the benefit of people to have that review. But I want to ask you a few more personal stories, if I may.
Absolutely.
So can you tell me a time in your life, in addition to the stories that you've already shared, where a plan was missing and it caused a catastrophe in your life or in the lives of somebody that you know? Or on the other hand, where perhaps somebody finally got the plan and that made a big difference? Do you have any catastrophic stories?
Xander's catastrophic failure. Give me a second.
Sure.
Clearly, folks, as he scratches his head, I was not expecting this question. I was unprepared for this question. The interviewer. No, let's see.
I gotta throw you some curveballs. I have a little story from somebody else whose name I won't mention, but
Okay.
he was the last child in the family, and his father said, "You are the mistake." So
Oh,
there was a lack of planning.
yes, yes.
And then, given that's what happened, perhaps that wouldn't have been the best plan of something to say to your child.
I guess the story of having a half-baked plan, but not really having thought the whole thing through. Years ago, I was tutoring people 50 plus on how to use computers. And as any good marketing 101 says, look at where the pain point is and offer the solution. So I stood on the corner in San Francisco and I had a flyer. It was around Christmas. And I just said to everyone who went by, are you tired of helping your mom and dad with the computer? You want them to know how to use the computer. And I had like packages I was selling. I was more successful at that than I anticipated and found that I actually didn't have enough time. Because I was going to people's houses to help their parents. It was a good plan. And obviously the advertising was really good. I understood the pain point and I understood what the solution was. What I hadn't thought about was how much time I had
So you
and
didn't
how
plan
many
a
people I could
scalable.
see in a given day, because I could spend an hour with you, Aurora, but someone else is 25 minutes away. So I can't I could see 8 people in a day. No, actually I couldn't. I could see maybe 4.
Yeah.
It was great. I had a long list of people, but some people dropped off because I just couldn't get to them.
Oh, that is a great story. A tidbit for people to think about, especially as they're working on their vision board this week, is how can you plan for phenomenal success beyond what you expected? Perhaps in that case, this was probably before the days of Zoom, but Zoom, you can do one-to-many, or what are video training or books are great because they can be one-to-many. But whatever people's plans are, unless it's getting married, I wouldn't advise one-to-many. Scaling on that is not a good plan. But I love that story. You didn't plan for how successful you were going to be, and your sales efforts were phenomenally successful, but your team was only you.
Exactly. And so I couldn't, there was not fully thinking all the steps through, right?
Right. So
And
you had to leave money on the table.
I did. Good problem to have, but I felt bad because I did want to help everyone.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I'll put you on the spot again. Do you have an insight around why many people don't plan, or a myth to bust? And I'll say something while you think of an answer. Like, I think a lot of people don't plan because they're so afraid of failure, and they don't give themselves permission to refine their plan. And also, I think another key point, this is not one, I should stick to one, is they set external goals like become a New York Times bestselling author or make $1 million. So my tip for that, I think the big myth is people are afraid of failing. And the only way to fail, really, failing to plan, is planning to fail. And I know I struggle with this sometimes myself. It's okay. I want to focus my planning on who do I want to be, and how do I want to contribute, and who do I want to connect to, and blocking off my time. So I block off time to work on your project, Xander, even when we're not talking, so that I feel like, oh, we're always making progress. So that would be my little tip about that. And I think that I'd love to hear what you think prevents people from planning.
I totally agree. Fear of failure. They get overwhelmed by the enormity. They just look at that whole process and don't break it down. But I think also people don't share it with a trusted advisor or confidant, and be vulnerable to your baby and say, do you see areas that I'm blind to, that I haven't seen? I think all too often we think, I got to have this perfect plan before I share it, but you don't. And if you share it with someone else, they may say, have you thought of this?
Oh, that is such a great point, Xander. I'm glad that you said that. I remember when I took my MBA, the leadership course, part of it was doing a 360. So
Yes.
you had to ask a bunch of people. I asked some people who worked for me, some people that I had worked for, some other important people in my life, like exes. And I was emotionally challenged. Basically, because my habit, to be transparent, was if I had a blind spot, I did my best to hide it.
Of course.
Which is normal. But what you're inviting us to is be transparent with the people that you trust, what your plan is, and let them point out, hey, you're missing this whole quadrant here. But that can be so scary, but valuable.
It is absolutely terrifying. And again, you may have this plan and here's what I'm going to do, when you share it with that person and they say in the most caring and loving way, I don't think that's going to work for these reasons, and you realize that particular plan wasn't going to work. So we'll go back to my example. Had I shared my plan of I'm going to go stand on street corner and do it, a confidant might have said, Xander, wow, that's brilliant. How many hours do you have to sell so that you don't oversell? That would have been a key thing that would have helped the whole process. Say, I can do this much. As speakers and conference hosts and stuff, I have to think about how many people will the room hold. I can't do a speech in California in the morning and then say, I'm going to make a speech in New York in the afternoon. That's not going to happen because of travel and time zones.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know some professional speakers brag about delivering 200 talks a year. Shoot me, that's way too much travel.
Yeah.
You know, even before the coronavirus restricted travel. So I think, go ahead.
No, but the whole point there is it is hard. This is your baby. You've crafted it. You obviously care a lot about it. I care so much about my Epic Begins with One Step Forward, but I have to be open to sharing it with people and inviting feedback and trying to take the feedback in the constructive, critical way that it may come in, and Pay attention to how you're reacting. To quote William Shakespeare, if you have a very sharp reaction, methinks the lady doth protest too much.
Yeah, that's a good one. And also look for feedback that's not just, you can't do that. Nobody can make a living as a writer, but instead feedback that's, how have you considered this quadrant, or how about this, or how about that? How about if it goes, what happens if it goes 10 times better than you expect? What happens if it goes 1/10 as well as you expect?
Right.
Maybe there are some really solid plans. If you had known in advance that you would have been oversubscribed, perhaps you could have got other instructors to work for you, but you didn't have that on your radar.
I did. And I will also completely own that there is sometimes with planning and executing, I will totally own my complete maleness in the sense of, this would be great to do it. Let's go. And I have found that the women in my life sometimes take a few extra moments to think about the steps. And I always use the example that teenage boys would be, and I certainly did this. Dude, it'd be so cool if we rode our bikes off the roof. It's only when someone's lying there with their leg broken going, oh, dude, someone could get hurt. Whereas the women would be like, yeah, someone's going to get hurt, so no.
Oh, that's so true. I'm going to ask you one more personal story and then we'll go on to the next step. But have you ever suffered through a 360 as I did, or have you ever received feedback that was difficult to take, and what did you learn, or what tips do you have?
Absolutely. I worked in corporate America. I had 360s and peer reviews and stuff. Criticism is hard. I thrive on praise. It's hard to hear negative things about me. Joked often that I have a wonderfully comfortable, at this point, cruise ship size yacht on the River Denial, like your blind spot. Oh no, that just doesn't exist. Being thrown into the rowboat on the river reality is always hard. However, I try really hard to go into that and say, these people are trying to help me. And although it's hard, take a moment, sit with it, understand it, ask questions if you don't understand what the feedback is. Because we hear something negative, we immediately want to fight that. Take a moment, listen to what it is, let it sink in. And if you have questions, if you're confused by why they're giving you that feedback, get curious about why they think I talk too much. Okay, interesting. Can you give me an example of when I talk too much? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If I give you a time when you didn't talk too much, Sandra, it'd be much easier. No, but
that's actually a perfect example, because it could be feedback that person felt, but it could also be a neutral thing or a positive thing for somebody who wants to be a speaker. But maybe you were in a role that, needed you to be mute. I don't know. But
yeah, no,
there can be gifts in there. Also, people, I find for myself, like, people will say 10 things about me and I'll only hear the one thing that I could possibly construe negatively, and it'll be like a knife to the heart, and I'm like, oh, but I didn't even receive the 9 clearly positive things. So take in everything.
97% positive, 3% not so much. What do we focus on? 97 here. 97's better. I just took an exam. I know I did not get a 97, but I was quite happy with the score that I got. I didn't go, oh my God, I missed these points. I was really happy with this.
Yeah, I love that. I love that about you. So, well, we covered a lot. This was a really great podcast. Thank you so much. Now, you have got more than a couple of points, but do you want to recap?
Sure.
What you've said, so that people can
absolutely
have that as a takeaway. And I want to see your vision board next week and challenge everybody listening to do a vision board.
Okay. I guess that will be part of the achieve. Start off by writing what it is that you want to achieve. Okay. Understand what your goal is. Create a timeline for your goal, right? So much easier if we understand when something is supposed to happen. Create the vision board of all of the things that you want. Share your plan with positive people in your life. You don't have any room for the negative Neils and Nellies. Get rid of them. Don't listen to them. And refine as you go, because
Absolutely.
that will help you have a really solid plan.
Absolutely. So go to xanderspragg.com to learn more, or go to Amazon and pick up his fantastic book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward. If you'd like some gifts from me, you can go to thoughtleaderlaunch.com, or you can go to Amazon and pick up my latest book, Your $1,000,000 Message. So what's coming up next week?
Next week, we are going to talk about, we've talked about the plan. Next week, we are talking about how to achieve our epic journey.
Sounds great, because we got to turn that blueprint into reality. So thank you so much for your time today. This was a really great call. And I'm Aurora Winter, and let's give the last word to you.
I'm Xander Sprague, and I'd like to leave you with this: epic choices, epic life.
That's a wrap. Bye for now.